Hello and welcome to the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Magna Mining. Magna Mining is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker NICU and on the OTCQX under the ticker MGMNF. And I'm joined today with the CEO and Director of Magna Mining, Jason Jessup. And Jason, always great to get you on the show. We were just talking, it's only been a month since we've chatted, but you've already had a lot of other news out. This one's going to be more focused on some of the exploration success the team's been having on the ground in Sudbury at your McCreedy West project and also at the historic past producing Levack Mine. We'll kick it off with the news that you put out to the marketplace on the 6th of August. And that was that at McCreedy West and the 700 footwall copper zone, headline number 17.9% copper, 0.6% nickel, and 28 grams per ton platinum, palladium, and gold over 1.8 meters. So almost 2 meters of really high grade copper there with a nice PGM kicker, a little bit of nickel in the mix. I mean, we're used to seeing 1% copper, not 18% copper. So with these kind of high grades, what are you learning about this 700 footwall copper zone at the McCreedy West mine?
Yeah, and good afternoon, Shad. It's great to be on here again. The reason we put that particular hole, and there was a number of high grade intersections and good widths and good copper grades in that news release, but the reason that was the headline hole is because it was one of two holes that we drilled in this area of around the 500-foot level at the McCreedy West mine, and it's you can almost call it the footwall of the footwall. So it's in the very much the most northern part in the footwall of the 700 footwall complex. But it is an area where we're seeing some really good precious metal grades, and in that hole really highlights those precious metals. And it's in an area that is not mined. So we're quite intrigued by it. As I said, about the 500-foot levels where we had those intersections. And there is a few historic holes that were drilled by FNX back in that area, but were not mined for one reason or another. And I have to say, and I've operated the McCreedy West mine with FNX. If I would have known about these veins back there when I was operating McCreedy West, we would have been mining them for sure because they're spectacular. But we mined a lot of other veins not so deep into the footwall of the 700 that had similar widths and similar copper grades, but did not have those precious metals. So very interesting. And I think that this has potential to expand up dip closer to surface. And we're doing some work on that right now and looking to get another drill in place, as well as down dip towards our PM zone, which is a bulk mining area FNX discovered and mined for a number of years, and we still have about 1.5 million tons of resource. It starts around the 1,000-foot level, but we think that there could be a link between these veins and that PM zone. And so now there's a lot of drilling to do, and I'm hoping that we can get some miners to go out, drift into these veins with small scale mining equipment and actually start following them to understand the strike extent of it. Because in my experience, when you have veins like this, you can do a lot of drilling before people really have confidence that there's continuity, or you just get on the vein, follow it, and you're going to know for sure whether they have continuity or not. So this is a new area. It's something I'm really hoping that we can get into part of our mine plan for 2026. And yeah, it has potential to have a meaningful and material difference in our production profile.
Man, I'm glad you brought that up, Jason, because you're right. To do it with a drill can sometimes be challenging to establish the continuity, but if you just drift over into it and follow the vein, then the proof's in the pudding. You can see it yourself. And so that's a great approach to it, but you're still going to be doing some more drilling here to kind of fill in some of the area in the interim. And to the point you made about being closer to surface, I think it says in the press release it's within 150 meters of surface. So nice to see some more shallow mineralization that hasn't been mined before. So in a way, I'm glad you didn't mine it with FNX and you saved it for Magna Mining for that sake. But a couple of the holes in here that we could also mention. Hole number 118, you had about 5% copper, 1% nickel, and near 3 grams per ton platinum and palladium over 1.5 meters. And then in hole 119, 1.5% copper, 0.4% nickel, 1.3 grams per ton platinum and palladium over 7 meters. So a little bit wider intercept there with the 7+ meter hit. So all of these are kind of tying together into not just copper mineralization, not just a nickel kicker, but some pretty nice PGMs, and even a couple of them have gold in the mix. So you mentioned that other precious metal zone, maybe put some color around, like you were just saying, how these veins may connect to that precious metals area.
Yeah, so in Sudbury, the metal distribution is really related to what's called the contact of the Sudbury igneous contact. So our nickel mineralization typically is nickel dominated, typically lower PGMs, in some cases very low PGMs, and it sits right on this contact. And then in the footwall of that, we get the Sudbury breccias, which host these high copper deposits. And as you get further into the footwall, the precious metal grade, further from that contact, the precious metal grades continue to go up and you get higher precious metal tenors. So for the amount of sulfides you have more precious metals. This PM zone is a splay off of the 700, so to speak. It looks like somehow they're connected, they're fed, and it's below, further down dip of the 700. And that's where we get smaller veins. They're more erratic generally, but in a bulk mining scenario, at FNX, we were mining large stopes, 20, 30,000 ton stopes, that were anywhere from 5 to 10 meters wide, sometimes, more than 70 meters long and 30 meters high, and mining like panel after panel of these types of stopes, leaving pillars in between. And they would grade 0.8% copper, 0.2% nickel, and 4 to 5 grams of platinum, palladium, gold combined. So that's that style of mineralization. And it was, to my knowledge anyway, one of the only places in Sudbury this sort of lower sulfide, higher PGM bulk mining has been done. I believe there's a lot more places and they were overlooked because to visually look at it, it doesn't look overly impressive with the amount of sulfides, but it's those precious metals that really, provide the revenue and the value. So I think there's more opportunity for that kind of mineralization and understanding how that ties in deeper in the footwall even than the 700 is very fascinating. I think there could be another PM zone, low sulfide, higher precious metal zone in behind some of this drilling that we just talked about around the 500-foot level where we see high PGMs, high copper. There's potential for more of that PM zone in behind that. So it's an interesting exploration target. I think the McCreedy West mine, it never ever ceases to impress me. With all the mining that's been done there, over 22 million tons mined, over started mining it back in the early 70s. It's amazing how it just keeps giving and at shallow depths. We're not talking about mining a mile below surface. The deepest level is 2,000 feet below surface, so about 650, 700 meters. That's the deepest level, and most of our mining is done, 1,000 feet or 300 meters below surface.
Well, the other thing that really caught my attention in this press release is that you believe that this could be a source of high margin ore by next year, by 2026, and that you're going to start initially mining the 700 zone later this year. So maybe talk about how quickly you can turn exploration into production here at McCreedy West.
Yeah, it's such a well-established mine with so much infrastructure. So I was underground last Friday with the mine general foreman, and I asked him, "Let's go visit this area. I want to see." And so we went to the 500-foot level, which I hadn't visited since I was working for FNX. And lo and behold, we go into an area. Now, this is an area that needs some rehabilitation, needs new screen on the back. It's been sitting idle for probably 12, 15 years. But when we went and looked at it, sure enough, there's a big copper vein right in the back of the drift. And with some rehab, we can get within 20 meters, about 60 feet away from where this drill intersection is. We can actually, with minimal effort, be able to get that close. And then, yeah, 60 feet of development, and we can be touching this drill hole. So that's what's pretty exciting to me is it doesn't take a lot of work. And that's where I'm saying I really hope we can put together a plan and find the resources to get people back in there and start working on these areas so we can get that incorporated into a plan for next year. Again, we put those results out on August 6th. We have a mine that's really busy doing a lot of things at once. So, the team will put this in the plan and we'll get working on it. I'm not guaranteeing we'll be mining it in Q1 of next year, but sometime next year we should be able to get in there, is my belief.
And because you have the partnership with both Glencore and Vale, would you process the precious metals, that area, differently than the nickel area, or would you have to ship it to two different areas for the refining? Maybe just put a little color on that too.
Yeah, we would continue to ship this ore to Vale's Clarabelle Mill, which is where we're shipping all of our ore currently from McCreedy West. It's a great mill. It has a good process, has, good recoveries of precious metals, and we have great terms with them. So yeah, that would be our plan. We really wouldn't change anything.
Okay, just didn't know if that changed it up being different mineralization or not, but it sounds like you can do everything there at Clarabelle with Valet. Well, and the other thing is that with operation, you said you have a busy mine. There's a lot of people underground doing a lot of things. Let's talk about that, Jason. People always want to know how are things going with the operations, just from a holistic standpoint. How are things going at McCreedy West?
Yeah, they're steadily progressing, and I wouldn't even say incrementally progressing. It's a steady progression from the time we took over. This year, our focus has been on really setting the mine up, and setting the mine up for success in 2026 means we need to get our development ahead of ourselves. So we've been working with our team, our development crews, to increase their productivity. A number of initiatives happened there, from getting them a new scoop tram to getting additional people in, going from 3 shifts to 4 shifts. All that's resulted in us increasing our output of development substantially. And our goal is to get, our development in a place by the end of the year where we're 4 to 6 months ahead on development, which is a comfortable level for us and much, much better than the situation we came into in March. So everything's moving in the right direction. We're accessing multiple stoping areas in a month, which previously wasn't happening, which gives flexibility. But all that being said, our focus right now is not on producing every pound of metal, every ton of ore we can. It's really about moving our waste first, making sure our development's taking priority, and setting ourselves up so we have a very efficient 2026. And that's been going great. We brought in a contractor, so we have a second crew doing development. So they mobilized in at the end of June and are ramping up their development. And all that's going to, lead towards where we want to get to again, which is having 4 to 6 months of development, in front of us. So we have proper amount of time to drill off stopes, design things, and have flexibility in our production plan.
Well, and Jason, just to that exact point, since the focus this year is on development more so than just trying to squeeze every pound into production that you can, maybe set up the right expectations for people that will be reviewing the upcoming few quarters that this is not going to be max production at McCreedy. This is more, like you say, getting the development in front of you. You'll still have development ore that you're putting through there, but maybe contrast this year's the next few quarters production with what you anticipate in 2026 when you actually are hitting it on full cylinders.
Yeah, and I have to be a little careful not to provide too much guidance when we haven't put out guidance for next year yet. But sort of my expectation, we put out their H2 guidance back in July, and we've shown that yes, we'll have ramping up our grades and our payable metal pounds in Q3 over in higher in Q4, and that's going to really lead to what we'll be doing in Q1 and in Q2 next year and beyond. I think that, and I've said this before, I think that we will be in a strong, mine profit next year out of McCreedy West. And I think that we'll be able to, and again, I don't want to give too much color on it, but we'll be able to significantly reinvest those profits into advancing our other projects like Levack next door. So that's kind of where we're going. Again, we'll be putting out more information later this year. We'll be putting out reserves for McCreedy West, and then early in 2026, putting out our guidance for 2026. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but what I can tell you is we're not here to break even. We're here to make profit and reinvest that. So that's the plan we're building.
Yeah, I think most people listening will like the idea of making a profit, a rare thing in mining. So, but yeah, I just wanted to set the stage that you're still kind of in a ramp up mode in a way because of all the development work, and then next year, 2026, will be more full bore production. But there will, of course, be production and profits coming through the balance of this year. But I appreciate you at least giving people the rough idea of how to anticipate the quarters to come. You brought up Levack, and so I think we should go there next, Jason. You put out some news to the marketplace just on August the 19th, and the headline number there, 2.3% nickel, 0.7% copper, over 28 meters. And so this is the prior producing Levack Mine, a mine that you operated, your team did when you were FNX. This is probably the next mine to go into development, and you're working on the mine startup plan. So what does this result tell you these big wide intercepts here as you start working towards a mine startup plan?
Yeah, we're, really, really pleased with these results. This is in an area, and what makes it really, I think, special to us is it's close to surface. It's in an area called the number one ore body. It was mined at depth by Inco early on in their mine plan at Levack Mine, and the upper part was not advanced up towards surface. Our plan would be, as it currently is drafted, and the concept is as we ramp down past the keel zone, their high copper zone, and start to develop into that, we continue the ramp on to the number one ore body. These intersections we talked about in this press release are coming from an area that's 130 to 150 meters below surface, very shallow. So potentially these areas could be brought into early into a mine restart plan. And what that means is as we are getting into these areas, we're developing into them, we're generating ore from development and then from early stoping as we continue to drive our ramp down to the 950-foot level to connect up to the existing ramp at Levack Mine. We would be able to start shipping ore to Vale and start generating revenue, potentially both from the keel zone high grade copper as well as this high grade nickel area. And I know that not many people are excited about nickel right now. I can't tell you what the price is going to be next year with any certainty, but what I can tell you is if you look at this even on a copper equivalent basis at today's prices, with the nickel and copper that's in this intersection, it is very valuable rock. It's highly valuable rock in our opinion, and it will fit very nicely into our mine restart plan. So we're excited about it, and we're excited to put out more results from these areas over the coming weeks because I think it ties in very well to our plans at Levack Mine.
Well, and it says here that you've got two different drill rigs going. One of the drills is at surface and it's doing some infill metallurgical holes between number one and number two. We were just talking about the number one there. And then the second drill it mentions is exploring the footwall environment between the number three, the nickel copper zone, and the Morrison copper PGM zone. So maybe talk about where those two drills are working and what you're hoping to figure out between one and two and three and Morrison.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the history of Levack Mine and my experience there. So in 2005, FNX announced the discovery of a deposit in the footwall of Levack Mine behind the main ore body and the number 7 and number 13 ore bodies. We called it the Levack Footwall Deposit, the LFD. Later named the Morrison Deposit after Gord Morrison, who was one of the key people at FNX who led the team to discover it. I was sent over to Levack Mine 2008 to develop it and bring it into commercial production, which was a great experience. It was some of the best ore I've ever seen. We consistently produced 8 to 10% copper, 8 to 10 grams of precious metals, and sort of 1 to 2% nickel over the entire tenure I was there once we got into commercial production. So spectacular ore, spectacular grades. It was mined up until 2019 and still has a historic resource left there. But the number 3 ore body and the number 1 and number 2 ore body, which we just spoke to, those high grade nickel intersections, they are located approximately a kilometer to kilometer and a half from, to the east of the Morrison deposit. And there's never really been exploration below them, nor a footwall deposit discovered. Now, there is what we refer to as the number 3 footwall, which is actually up dip of the number 3 in the Sudbury breccia, but the down dip of it has never really been explored. And it's a bit more challenging to drill. But we did our homework, we did our research, we did all the planning, and we convinced ourselves we need to drill a hole from surface. So back in early June, we started a hole from surface, we drilled down, and in July we put out results from that hole, which intersected a 2-foot intersection of 2.5% copper, 8% nickel, and about 17, 18 grams of platinum, palladium, gold combined. So not a big intersection, but pretty crazy high grade. And I got really excited. And the reason I got excited because this looks like the very upper part of the Morrison deposit, the Levack footwall. When we first got in on the 2,900-foot level, the first ore we intersected was high in nickel. It was 1 to 2-foot veins of very high grade nickel with a bit of copper and a bit of precious metals, but it transitioned about 500 feet below that. It gradually transitioned more copper, less nickel, until it was just massive chalcopyrite, running 20 to 30% copper. And, that happened around the 3,400 foot level. So we have in below the number three, below this intersection that we announced back in July, we have deepened a hole. We've done geophysics on it. We've wedged off it, assays pending, and we're in the process of taking another wedge off that hole. So this is a really interesting area. I truly believe that Levack has potential for another Morrison deposit. It's a big property. It's got a lot of mineralization, over 65 million tons mined historically. So we're excited, and once we are probably in the next week or two, we'll be getting a second drill from surface, also drilling in this area. So we're going to focus on it, and within 6 to 10 weeks, we'll have two drills turning underground as well, focused on this area below the number three. We think it has huge potential. Yeah, we're encouraged by what we know so far. We're seeing the right indicators, and yeah, we're going to keep drilling that probably for the next quarter or two for sure.
All right. Well, fingers crossed that you have another Morrison type deposit down there at down dip from number three, and you're seeing the right kind of indicator. So you'll have a lot of drill news coming up, so people can be looking out for that. One other question just to work in here too is you mentioned in the press release that in addition to that, you're also going to be following up on the east side of the Facunas Fault, and you'd put in a historic hole there back in FNX that had 33% copper, 0.9% nickel, and 23.9, so almost 24 grams per ton platinum, palladium, and gold. Talk to us about this east side of the Facunas Fault, another target the team's going to go after.
Yeah, and this is in the same breccia plane, but on the other side of a fault. So there's a bit of a fault offset there. Before KGHM sold the property, they drilled two holes to test that side of the fault. And, that side of the fault, the east side of the Facunas Fault, that breccia unit also hosts Vale's 153 ore body, which is a high-grade copper footwall deposit. They've been mining it for over 30 years. I actually worked there for 4 years when I first moved to Sudbury. It's spectacular. It's like the Morrison deposit, but they've been mining it for 30 years. That's how big it is. This is on that same breccia plane, maybe 400 or 500 meters away. They've mined that deposit sort of along that breccia plane for probably a kilometer and a half. So it's in the right place with no follow-up. So our plan is to go back down that hole, the KGHM drill that intersected that, wedge off it, and take a couple cuts off of that to test in and around that intersection. Where you have that high grade of copper and precious metals in this breccia footwall environment, like it doesn't just happen to be there. These are systems that travel in these veins. It's to understand them, follow them, and at some point they get thicker. That's proven. That's what we've seen, in the Sudbury Basin and the North Range, especially of the Sudbury Basin. So it's following up on that vein, seeing where it goes, and hopefully on our property we're gonna, find some thicker widths of similar grades. So that's the idea there. So yeah, we have, in conjunction with this below the number three, we also have the other side of the fault, which is really only a few hundred meters away, but deeper because of just that fault offset.
Well, there's obviously just a lot of targets, is the takeaway I'm getting here at Levack. Between the number one that we talked about, between the number one and number two, the number three down dip, and then the east side of this fault here at the Facunas Fault, you got a lot of different targets that you're going after. And so I guess just wrap us up with that point that in addition to being a new producer, you're really an exploration company at heart here, and all the development work is coming out of the drill bit work. So maybe just speak to the bigger vision and how people should think about Magna Mining.
Well, this is a playbook taken right out of my experience with FNX. We generated lots of revenues by producing at McCreedy West, reinvested those into restarting Levack Mine and the Podolsky Mine. But, we also had tremendous exploration success, discovering high-grade footwall zones that created hundreds of millions of dollars in value in the company. We still believe there's that opportunity there, and that's why it's one of our key pillars of growth is through exploration. I truly believe we will discover new deposits here and significant new world-class deposits on our properties in Sudbury. And, we can bring them into production. So we're not just going to drill them looking to sell. We're going to bring them in production. We're going to create more cash flow. We're going to grow our company. And we have a lot of properties here to continue to explore. So we're going to do it methodically. But yeah, exploration is a big part, and I think we're getting zero value in the market on exploration right now. I'll be quite frank, and we're going to work really hard on changing that.
Well, we'll definitely keep following along with it here at the KE report because there's going to be a lot of drill assays on tap, it sounds like, from both projects. And not to mention, you have a whole portfolio of projects that we haven't even got into in this discussion with lots of other exploration upside for down the road. So we'll definitely keep tabs on all the drill news as it comes out, as well as the operations news. So Jason, appreciate you coming on the KE report as always and sharing the information. For those of you listening in, definitely click on the link below in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Magna Mining website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates and just have them hit your email inbox or follow along as the assays come out. And I'm sure we'll be getting you back on to chat about those when they do, Jason. As always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Always a pleasure, Shad. Thanks a lot.